All right, good morning, everybody. Erin Helly here. Welcome to today's webinar. We get to talk to John Plumstead today. John is going to talk to us probably about a lot of things, but the main topic is mindset. And the reason that he's particularly valuable, or at least I know that he's particularly valuable here, is because for months, John was coaching me and focusing a lot on mindset, and it helped me through a lot of hurdles, a lot of issues as an entrepreneur, and just helped me just kind of realize that there were so many barriers I was putting in my own way, and there's so many things that he helped me with that I don't know that I could ever describe those. But now that he's an entrepreneur, it's really interesting to see him experience a lot of the same things and a lot of the same struggles and the ups and downs and everything that comes along with entrepreneurship. So all that said, I'm going to hand it over to John so he can tell us a little bit about him and how he got into real estate.
Thanks, Erin. I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. So thank you. It's interesting you say that I coached you, but I think you gave me definitely as much or more. But it was definitely a good relationship, and I think it goes to whether it's a coach or just a relationship. When you have a mentor or a friend that brings the best out of you, you should schedule those conversations, right? So we kind of called it a coaching call, but I think what it really was two friends that were very like-minded that put something on the calendar and then talked every week for months, and I think brought the best out of each other. But I'm a real estate investor. I'm still active duty in the Army right now as well. I always say, hey, some people with full-time jobs take their extra money and they invest it in the stock market, and that's good and love them for it. But what me and my family prefer to do is we like to take that extra money and we like to invest it in real estate. So love the day job, love being an Army officer, but also think it's fun and lucrative to invest in real estate. Graduated with Erin from West Point back in 2009. Kind of been stationed all over the place. Currently stationed back at West Point, and I teach sport and performance psychology here at West Point. So that's why, I've always kind of been interested in the teach, coach, mentor roles. But then the Army paid for me to go get a master's degree in sport and performance psychology, and now I get to teach it at West Point. A lot of people are like, what is mindset training, or what is sport and performance psychology? And it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. But what I look at it as is I want to be your awesome coach, right? Not that I'm awesome, but I want to help people bring out their awesomeness and help people accomplish their goals, whatever goals they come up with. I hope that by talking a little bit through the mindset and the emotional connection there, I can help them improve. So I think that's a little bit of an intro, Erin.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you are awesome. And I think it's cool that
Thank you.
You're so motivated by other people's success. You clearly define success by the value you can bring to other people and help them succeed. And that's really cool. And I kind of want to hit on a couple of things you just mentioned. You talked about this concept of mentorship, and you likened it to just a relationship between two friends. And I think that's something that people should know. Mentorship can look like a lot of different things. It can look like this paid, very professional structure, all the way down to, somebody that you're friends with who's going to push you, and anything in between. So I think people kind of need to wrap their head around taking advantage of the relationships that they have and the things that they can do. Not everyone's going to be able to pay for a $50,000 coaching mentorship program, at least in the beginning, but that's okay. That doesn't mean you should totally write yourself off and not, pursue the things that you want to pursue. And then the other thing you said was, like-minded people. And I think sometimes people think that means you need to be really similar with similar backgrounds and things like that. But I don't think that at all. I think we're pretty similar and like-minded. But we also have really, really different perspectives. And that's what I think I appreciate most. I'll be telling you something that I'm struggling with, and you'll come up with this way to look at it from somewhere completely different that I never would have considered. And a lot of times it opens a door or helps me solve a problem that might have taken me a lot longer to figure out myself.
I agree. I think you want to get teamed up with someone who's like-minded in the fact that they're just as motivated because when you're trying to motivate someone, like it can get exhausting. So, if you have similar motivation levels, and then I also think like similar goals in magnitude, right? Like if it can be trouble if you're trying to talk to a partner and they want to buy one rental house and you want to be a millionaire through real estate, like sometimes that can cause problems. But if you're similar in the magnitude of your goals, like, hey, we want to make the world a better place and we want to do awesome things and make a ton of money, and you're both super motivated, if you meet that bar, then I completely agree, Aaron. Like the more different you can be, the better. So.
Yeah, awesome. So I want to hear from you what it is about this concept of mindset that is so appealing.
Yeah, so I think for some reason from like an early age, I was just drawn to like the idea that your mindset mattered, and I might not have been able to fully explain that, but I just knew that, especially when sports, I grew up playing sports, that like there was just some type of like way that attitude helped, right? When you're playing football at recess, there were some kids that might have been faster or more athletic, but the ones that just had like an attitude and some swagger, like they could perform better, right? And for some reason, I was like, I want to be that kid that's got the swagger, So I tried to, emulate the kids with swagger. And then as I got older, I started trying to read books about it, or when something was on the TV and maybe Michael Jordan was talking about his mindset and how he was a fierce competitor, I was just super interested in the differences there. And then I went to West Point and played football and was introduced to the Center for Enhanced Performance, which is where I work now. But it's a place at West Point with performance psychology consultants that are trained, and they help cadets set goals, right? And how to manage their emotions and keep their composure under pressure and how to build confidence. So then I started getting some formal education in those things, and then I would put it into practice right away, right? People would talk to me about how to be more confident on the football field, and then I'd try to take those things, and more times than not, I would end up being more confident on the football field in a very short period of time. And I loved this stuff and read more books and got more obsessed with it. And then at a certain point, I started not just applying that attitude to sports, but also applying it to how can I be the best Army officer I can be? How can I be a great leader? How can I have a swagger as an Army officer? How can I help my platoon or my company or whatever soldiers I'm working with? How can I try my best to have this whole collective unit have a swagger and have confidence? And then I started trying to bring that same mental edge, if you will, to real estate investing, right? I learned like, hey, performance psychology is all about how to be your best when you need to be your best. And there's a lot of times in real estate investing that are hard. And if you can have a little bit of a mental edge, it's going to help you a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really cool. When I was at school, I went to the Center for Enhanced Performance fairly often, but for me, it was more like sort of maintenance. Like, how do I just survive here? And how do I, continue to pass my classes and swim and do all the other requirements? And I kind of regret that I wasn't able to realize how all these things that you're talking about, I didn't learn a lot of this stuff until in my late 20s. Like I was a good swimmer in college, but I wonder if I was able to tap into that like mental side and that mindset. I truly think I could have been great, because I look at myself now, I'm 33. I can like almost do all the same things I could do when I was 20, 22, not because I'm stronger. I'm not nearly as strong, but I am mentally so much more capable. And I feel like I missed a huge part of my like athletic career because nobody really ever explained how important that stuff was to me. And we used to swim like 3 to 4 hours a day. And very rarely, like I'm talking like once a season, would we sit down and do like a collective visualization exercise. And it's kind of crazy that I feel like we missed so much. And I like to to listen to what Tom Brady has to say a lot, because he's, you know, the GOAT, and he continues to get better and better with age. And it's because he's able to tap into that mentality and mindset side of it. And he's able to convince his body that he can still do all these things. And there's obviously something to that. So I like that you brought it up.
Yeah, I think there's this idea that, you know, some people like to just stiff arm it and be like, it's psychology, it's all BS, or like none of that stuff matters. And like, I'm not here to convince anyone otherwise. Like, you can believe whatever you want to believe. But I look at it like take swimming, for example. And I've worked with a bunch of swimmers at West Point in my current position. But it's this idea of like, isn't it interesting how like on a Tuesday, you might feel really good in the pool. And then on Wednesday, for some reason, you feel terrible in the pool, right? Like, do you think you had any like muscle atrophy, or did you have any injury that affected that? And chances are, like, if it's 24 hours difference, like, no, just for some reason, I felt really good one day and I felt really bad the next day. And I would say a lot of times we can probably chalk that up to a different in mindset. So then it's like, let's start peeling back the layers there and figure out, can we pinpoint why we felt so different? And if we can pinpoint some of the good stuff that happened on the day where we felt really good, can we replicate that more? Right. So when I look at performance psychology, it's not that like, hey, let me sprinkle some magic fairy dust and then you're just going to be good to go, and you know, you're going to have this edge no matter what. I think it's first just this awareness that like your mindset matters, right? Like, if you want to have a better day and you want to perform better, like, mindset is going to be part of that equation. And then performance psychology is just this constant evolution, this constant process of, when we're having bad days, trying to make those bad days a little bit better. And we're having good days, try to make those good days a little bit better, and so on and so forth. So.
Yeah. So when you work with these cadets, and for those people that don't know what that is, they're West Point students, right? They're 20-ish years old. And they're also under a pretty good deal of stress, you know, college student plus a lot of additional requirements. Most of them are athletes. Obviously, most of the people that you work with especially are athletes. What type of qualities or attributes do you see in those cadets that are really successful from like the coaching and the mentorship that you help them with?
I think, number one, they have to be at least a little bit vulnerable, because there's definitely cadets or anyone I've worked with that they try not to be open and honest to me about their mindset and their feelings. And if they're not open and honest to me, they're probably not being open and honest to themselves either. And I think the first like kind of foundational layer of trying to be your best is awareness. And if you don't have good awareness, then it's really hard to go anywhere, right? So you have to have that awareness of like, how am I feeling today? Am I confident? Do I feel like crap, right? Like, that awareness is first. And I think the next big thing is Carol Dweck wrote a book called Mindset, and it's this concept of growth versus fixed mindset. And if you have a growth mindset, you believe that your talents and abilities can improve through hard work. And if you have a fixed mindset, you think you're just born with an innate ability and that you can't change that, right? So you put those together. If you have awareness, you understand what you're good and not so good at. And then if you have a growth mindset on top of that, you can identify those things that you're not good at, and you believe that you can get better through hard work, right? So if I take a person, or I work with a person who has decent awareness and also has a growth mindset, like, the sky's kind of the limit, right? They can recognize where they're struggling. They believe they can get better in those areas. Now we can get to work and start getting after those. But if they don't have awareness and they can't be honest about how they're feeling and honest about where their doubts are, we're never going to get there. Or even if they do have good awareness, but they have a fixed mindset and they just say, hey, I'm never going to get better at that. Hey, I'm an introvert, so I'm never going to be able to do sales. Or, hey, I've never been good at math, so I'm never going to be able to underwrite a property. If they have that fixed mindset, I can't do anything with them either. So I try to work on that with cadets and different people I work with. But if they don't have good awareness and they don't have a growth mindset in areas they need to improve upon, it's really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally see that. You brought up before this sort of like concept of swagger. And when I was listening to you talk, I was thinking like, it's very different for you to have swagger than for me to have swagger. Like, especially in the situation you were talking about, like your Army unit. And I think like it's a good thing for men to have this swagger in a lot of ways. And sometimes it's not perceived the same way for women. And I immediately I didn't know if I wanted to even talk about this because I know that this is a mental block for me. And I know that this is, me probably making excuses and holding myself back. But then when you brought up this whole like concept of vulnerability and awareness and willing to share, you could almost say that goes the other way. Like women typically would be more open to being vulnerable and open and more aware, or at least like consciously make an effort to be more aware. And so, and then I'm like kind of having this like epiphany as we're talking, but I'm thinking about, you talked a lot about like what changes from this day to this day. And a lot of that is mindset and mentality. But some of it is also like science and physiology, right? Like we have hormone stuff. We have different times that our body is growing or developing or peaking. Like I know, for example, most college swimmers, most men peak in college, most women peak in high school. And so I could have had this idea that when I got to West Point, there's no way I could have gotten better as a swimmer because I'm already past my prime. I've already peaked. And a lot of people had that attitude, but I didn't. And I was able, like my freshman year, was my best year ever. And so I think that there's there are limitations, or not limitations, but I guess like things that can hold you back or prevent you maybe from doing one thing or another. But I still think that your attitude and your mentality can overcome all of those things.
Yeah. I mean, let's say I was working with you when you were a freshman at West Point, right? I would first try to establish some rapport, but maybe we'd get to the point where I'd be like, Aaron, are you going to quit the team? Like, if you want to quit the team, quit the team. But if you're going to be on the team, we're not going to try for, a participation ribbon. Like, let's do this or let's not. And if you're going to do it, then we got to work through your limiting beliefs that you've already hit your prime, right? Because there's no way you can hit your prime in the future if you think that time has already passed, right? So that can definitely be a limiting belief. But and then, some people out there might be like, well, it's science. Like, it happens. Like, it's real. Like, defy the science, right? Like, science, the scientific method takes a lot of people and then makes means and averages and gets into math, right? There's always outliers. Just be an outlier,
For sure. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So we totally kind of off topic, but on that concept, my husband's really into ultra running, and we've been watching these we literally watched people run for hours at a time. And
Exciting.
It's so crazy. I know it is. But when you see that, like, we just watched, I don't even remember the guy's name, but he ran a marathon in 2 hours. 2 hours. Like, before he did that, it was considered impossible to run a marathon in 2 hours. But he did it. It took him it took him a lot of tries, but he did it. And so I think that's kind of to your point, like, there are limitations, and 99.999% of the planet will never be able to run a marathon in 2 hours. But I think that if you set your mind to it, then you can get pretty darn close, if not accomplish it. And we see that like with Tom Brady, Usain Bolt, all these people that just defy the science. And I think that can, what makes them different? I mean, you can say there are physiological differences. You can say there's this or that, or Michael Jordan. It only takes one conversation with those people to realize that what sets them apart is the fact that they know they can do it and they're willing to get there.
I agree. And I think it's, it can be crazy things like that, but it can also, like, to bring it back to our level, like it can be this idea that, like, you can live your life in two ways. You can live your life like society tells you to live your life, or you can say, like, I want to do more. And you get to define what more is. But let's say, even if you don't end up accomplishing the awesome goal that you set out for, don't you want to live a life where, like, you're striving for more as opposed to, like, falling in line? I think, I love setting goals and I love accomplishing the goals, right? But I think every time I accomplish a goal, it's not like, all right, now I can chill. Like now I don't have to do anything, right? What do? I set a new goal because I think the, most fulfilling part of life is this challenge and excitement for things to come.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was just on the phone the other day with a client who said, I want to build a real estate portfolio this year that brings me $5,000 in income. And she just laughed and she said, is that crazy? And I said, yes, that is absolutely crazy, but still doable. And I said, what if you bust your butt for the next year and you only get to $3,000 in income or 2,500, halfway there, right? Are you going to be disappointed? Maybe, but use that to fuel you. But at the same time, you are so much further along in 1 year than you would have been if you didn't do anything. So I agree. Reach for those, strive to do those things. Maybe it'll take you longer to get there. Maybe you kind of change that threshold or that actual goal over time. But I think it's so important that you're working towards something every day. Otherwise, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
Right. And then, at the end, whenever, the end is like, don't you want to be able to look back and be like, dang, that was a wild ride. Like, I'm glad I pushed as hard as I did, as opposed to like, you see so many, they're like Facebook memes and stuff about things people regret when they're on their deathbed. And so often you see like not taking risk, worrying too much about what other people think. So, I mean, I still have all that. I'm far from perfect, but that's something that's on my mind, is like trying to stiff arm that stuff and be like, I want to strive for awesomeness,
Yeah, for sure. And you're going to fail at some points. I think I've done a lot of flips in the past couple of years. And the one flip that seems to take over all the other ones is the one that I utterly failed at. And I lost almost $45,000. Everything that could have went wrong did in every situation. And then a global pandemic hit and just exacerbated every issue that I'd had up to that point. And what I realized that throughout that process was that I figured it out every step of the way. I didn't think I was going to be able to cover that mortgage payment, which was $4,800 a month. I thought January was like my drop dead date. And I held on until June and I made those payments. And that was just the mortgage. That wasn't the utilities and all the other things. All the while losing money and racking up credit card debt and all this stuff. And now that I've sold it, like that is part of my story now. And that now I know that pretty much whatever this business throws at me or whatever life throws at me, I'm going to rise to the occasion and I'm going to be able to figure it out. And there were times where I was like hardly figuring it out and hardly treading water and so consumed by fear that I literally like couldn't even move, but I made it through it. And I know now that I'm so much stronger because of it. And out of all the successful flips that I had before that, this is the one that taught me the most about myself. And I know now that I learned a lot of things. I won't do a lot of the same things, but the real important lessons were just about me and what I was able to do. So I think that failure is something you can look at as just something really crappy that sucks and a reason you don't want to pursue things. But I think that's where the true learning happens.
For sure. I'm reminded of a saying like growth only happens outside your comfort zone. And the reason people don't want to go outside their comfort zone is because you could fail, right? But if growth only occurs outside your comfort zone, it means you got to do it. And you just have to acknowledge that sometimes you're going to fail, but failing today doesn't mean we need to fail for the year, fail for our life, right? Short-term stuff is going to help us expand that comfort zone every time we grow.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's talk about, a lot of people on this that are listening are going to be new investors, real estate investors in general. What advice can you give them as far as mindset?
That's a big question, Erin. Let's see. So, what advice can I give them as far as real estate and getting started? One, I would say, if you, like, this might not be a good answer, but I'm going to throw it out there anyways. If you want to get started, start. If you don't want to get started, don't waste my time. Okay. And the reason I say that is I talk to a lot of people that are like, hey, I want to get started in real estate. And I'm like, great. What have you done prior to this conversation we're having right now. And they're like, well, I talked to my uncle who knows a guy and they were really rich because of real estate. And I know I want to get into it. I'm just like over time, like maybe it sounds callous, but I get so many of those. I'm just like, you got to go do some more research or something. Like I'm not going to waste my time because I never get anything done if I answered all these questions. Right. So like, if you're going to do it, like figure out what your path is. What does it look like? Right. I would say it probably looks like first doing some education. What should your education be? My education that I focus on is I listen to every Bigger Pockets podcast. There was like 250 or something at the time. And I just said, I'm going to start at episode 1 and I'm going to listen to all of them. And then I'm going to go to Amazon and I'm going to try to buy like the top 20 books on real estate. And I'm going to try to read them all to get all that knowledge. And then I'm going to try to network with as many people that are currently investing in real estate or friends that I think might want to invest in real estate. And I'm going to try to talk to them as much as possible and pick their brain. And then I'm going to try to figure out how I can buy a property as soon as possible with as little risk as possible. And for me, that started out with what someone would call like a live-in flip, right? Where you buy a crappy house, you fix it up to sell it, but instead of you live in the house as you go through that process. So then it cuts down on your risk. And then the next deal I did, we did another live-in flip, and it was just a bigger, more expensive house. And then it took 2 live-in flips for me to be like, I think we can now buy a house where we don't live in, right? We can buy it all by itself and we can use that as our investment. But it was like this stair-stepping approach of where my comfort level was to get there. But to answer your question on mindset, what do you do for mindset, right? I think a lot of people say you have to take massive action. That's like a buzz phrase, right? Take massive action. And I agree with that. You have to take massive action. But the problem is a lot of people don't know what massive action is. You figure out what massive action is to you. I think it should be some combination of networking, education, trying to find deals. But you gotta give yourself a foundation before you just call a real estate agent and you're like, hey, I want to invest in rental properties. So yeah, that's how I'd start that question. Not a great answer maybe, but that's how I'll start.
No, I think it's a great answer. And I think that last thing you said about, calling the real estate agent, that's a relationship too. Your real estate agent only gets paid. And, most people that you work with in real estate are only going to get paid when you buy properties. And so as much as you want to have them on their team, you want them to have you on their team, vice versa, whatever I'm trying to say. But you need to make sure that they realize, like, you mean business, you're going to do things in this industry, and, you're going to do what it takes to buy properties. And I think that you have to have some sort of a foundation before you just get them on the phone, because they're going to know that you're full of crap and they're probably not going to commit a lot of time to you. So I think that's a very practical, like, tactical piece there. And then I also think that, like, sort of bigger picture, you're talking a lot about, like, these relationships and people that I think every person listening to this probably has a John Plumstead in their life, and they need to leverage that relationship. And you need to have somebody who's going to hold you accountable. And it doesn't have to be anything formal or professional in any way. I think you just need to get out there and share your goals and have that person help you develop those and help push you. So you're actually reaching for goals that are, more than just some easy thing to accomplish. You need someone who is going to hold you accountable and push you. And that's something that I get from John every day. And there are times when he drives me crazy, and I'll even hang up the phone with him and I'll be like, I'll tell my husband, like, John said this, and my husband will be like, suck it up, cupcake, like, you got to do it, and you need those people in your life. Otherwise you are just going to flounder. So I don't think that was a bad answer at all. I think it's all good advice.
I think too often we see like 2 groups of people, right? You see the group of people that are super motivated, but they have no clue what they're doing, right? And they're just completely sporadic. Then you have people on the other end of the spectrum that know exactly what they're doing. They have, they've done 300 Excel spreadsheets and they know exactly what their plan is. And then you're like, when's the last time you picked up the phone and called a real estate agent? And they're like, haven't actually done that yet, right? So I think it's either finding the balance, right, where you can do both. Or I think another great option, back to the partner piece, is like, if you're the person that feels like you have a good plan, but the idea of talking to a bunch of real estate agents, doesn't sound appealing to you, try to find someone that likes doing that type of stuff and partner up. And then I would also say, like coaches, right? Like, not to be a sales pitch here, and I don't sell any coaching programs, but I know I've probably spent $10,000 on real estate coaches, and out of the $10,000 I've spent, I've gotten back, exponentially more than $10,000 from that. So what does that mean for you? You're like, hey, if you don't have the money to get a coach, don't do it. Like, you don't need a coach. Absolutely don't. But if you want to cut the learning curve in half, I would say spend on the best coach you can get and learn their system, because it's a lot easier to create your own way in this business after you learn someone else's way, right? Like, if you master someone else's way, then you're like, okay, I see that. I can see the strengths and weaknesses of that approach. But I'm in a different market and I have a different skill set, so I'm going to adjust it my own way. But it takes a long time to develop your own system if you're starting from scratch. So real estate is just one of those industries where they're not giving away all the stuff for free, right? There's a lot of industries out there where you don't have to pay to get really good coaching, right? But in real estate, because there's so many people making so much money in real estate, if you want a good coach, you're probably going to have to pay for that. And maybe that's not good, and that's not what you want to hear, but that's just how this industry works. Like, we're thinking about joining a mastermind right now that is $20,000 a year, right? $20K a year. If you would have told me a couple of years ago, I'd have been like, you're nuts. Like, that is a scam. That's a guru. Like, get away from here. It stinks. And now I'm looking at it like, being in the same room as some of these people that are also paying the $20,000 for this mastermind, I am 100% positive month one, we would get enough tips to cover that 20K. And then we would keep getting that month after month after month, right? So that's maybe an extreme example. I don't know, but it goes to show you, I think in this industry, if you want to cut the learning curve, you're going to have to either invest a ton of time, or you're going to have to start investing some money in some good coaching programs.
Yeah, that's huge. I agree. And I think kind of the positive side of that, having to pay for education, I think it kind of comes from the fact that this is one of the only industries, if not the only industry, where you can make it big with no credentials, no education requirements. You can be a high school dropout and you can become a millionaire in real estate in a couple of years. I don't know that you're going to find that in many other places. So like you said, like you can cut that time in half, or you can kind of grab onto some guru's coattails, and however it looks for you. I just think that you have to look at it as an investment in yourself. And I think, whether it's a price that you're paying or just a sacrifice that you're making, that's what's going to keep driving you. If we pay $20,000 for this mastermind, you bet that we're going to take it seriously, right? Like, we're not just going to like kind of hope that we get something here and there. Like, we're going to grind it out and we're going to get everything we possibly can from it. And I think that's why a lot of those really high level courses, they bring a ton of value, but they need you to be committed, because they're also relying on you to help the other people in that mastermind and the other people in that course, because collectively everyone's going to raise each other's game, and you're going to do so much more than you probably ever could on your own, particularly in that same time frame.
I agree. One of the rules we have in our house is we're allowed to buy any book anytime, no questions asked. I'm a huge reader. Maybe that makes me a dork if you don't read that much, but I get a lot out of reading. So I just look at that investment in yourself, right? I buy a ton of books, and there's plenty of books that I buy and I only read the first chapter. I'm like, I think I got as much as I need to get out of this. But at a certain level, I've changed my mindset to also looking at coaches and courses like that. Like, the price price point's quite a bit higher. So my wife and I definitely still talk through those decisions, right? But just this idea of like investing in yourself almost always pays off.
Yeah, I love that. All right. Any parting advice?
Parting advice. Yeah, the golden rule matters. Make the world a better place by treating people with respect. That's not necessarily on topic, but I think it's so important, right? Like whether you're in real estate or you're a parent raising kids or you're a leader, like so much can be carried forward if you just treat people with love and respect. I think in real estate, it's really easy to have limiting beliefs, especially if you come from a family that wasn't involved in real estate, or if you come from a family that had, not much means. You can, maybe you came from a poor family. I grew up in a family on welfare, and I had a ton of limiting beliefs that I could accomplish high levels of success financially, and I still struggle with like, can I make $10,000 a month? Can I make $50,000 a month? Can I, like, what is appropriate for those goals? And I find so much of it is like limiting beliefs that are from my childhood. So I got to constantly beat those down. But I think real estate is that one place where it's an equalizer, where like the market doesn't care what your history is, doesn't care what school you went to, what your education level is, like, how rich or poor your family was. If you can figure out how real estate works, you can make a lot of money, right? You think about most people, the largest transaction of their life is going to be a, buying and selling a house, right? So if you can figure out how to be part of that equation and how to get a couple percentage points during those transactions, you can make so much money. I used to own an ice cream shop, and our margins were like, 50 to 90% on an ice cream cone, right? So for every ice cream cone we sold for $1, like we'd get 90 cents, right? But you know how many ice cream cones you have to sell to make any money? It's a tough business, right? Where then you look at real estate and someone buys $150,000 house, like they have a line item for $3,000. Like they don't even know what that means, but they're like 150,000, like $3,000 of closing costs. Like, okay, whatever, right? So it just goes to show you, like, there's a lot of money being thrown around in real estate. And I don't think money is the key to happiness, or you have to have a certain level of finances to have a great life. But the bottom line is money is part of the equation in our society, right? Like think about if money was no object, how would you live your life differently? Like then after you answer those questions, figure out a way to get enough money to make those true, right? Like in 2020, none of us should look at our profession or our occupation like a burden. We should figure out how to make enough money so we choose that we want to go to work every day. And if that brings us happiness, awesome. But I think why I'm so passionate about real estate is because you can just make so much money. You can make enough money to live whatever life you want to live. So there you go. Those are my parting words.
I love it. I agree. You're in the driver's seat, you're in control. And that's what I love too. Money's the tool. That's amazing. All right, John, how can we get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me on social media platforms, John Plumstead, Plumstead. You can send me an email, John, John, at graylineinvestments.com. Or you can hit up Erin because she's my BFF and she can always get in touch with me. But I wish everyone success and happiness.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we really appreciate you being here. Lots of golden nuggets that you just dropped in all of our laps. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It was a joy.
Yeah. And anybody listening, if you need help getting into real estate, if you need some direction, you need some coaching, don't hesitate to reach out. All of the contact information will be in the show notes, and we look forward to working with you and achieving all of our goals together.